It's a Thanksgiving Day special. We got my friend and co-host Eric Sammons with me, joining me today on the show for Catholic Champion. Today, we're going to be talking about the future of American Catholicism and the future of MAGA. What's going on there? Stay tuned. As promised, Eric Sammons is here. My friend, and you're also, more importantly, you're obviously the editor of Crisis Magazine. A lot of our people read what you do there, do fantastic work. You keep a spicy X account and you keep on everything there. You're the father of 7 kids. And I don't know, maybe the most important thing is that you're the owner of a dumb phone, right?
Yes, I've converted my smartphone into a dumb phone. It's kind of like my cell. It represents a microcosm of me. As I've gotten older, I feel like I'm getting dumber. So yeah, I just wanted to make my phone come along with me. So actually, I think my smartphone made me dumber, and that's why I got it turned into a dumb phone so that I can hopefully become smarter. I showed it to you beforehand, but I'll show it to everybody. So it's actually an iPhone, but that's just the screen. It just has like the basics. And it does have the ability to do some other stuff in case I need it. But really, I look at it like a very utilitarian now. If I need to check my email, okay, fine. But I'm not constantly scrolling on. I don't have any social media on it. So yeah. So making my phone dumb so that I might be smart again.
I think that's so smart and so wise, helpful for the interior life. I was at a Catholic prayer breakfast the other day, and this religious brother came up to me, and anyway, as long as we were going to exchange numbers. And I said, well, let me just send you a text. And he pulls out his phone, and it's like, I mean, this phone looked like probably from like the 1990s, Eric. I mean, it was like, and he started typing, he's like, you know what? One of my fellow seminarians, who's the diocesan seminary and carries like a honorable 2025 phone, is you just text him and I'll get the number from him. Like, yeah, no problem, brother. So anyway, I think it's good. I think it's super important for the interior life and, to turn that off. Right. So, my respect. But you found a way to do this. You're the father of 7 kids and you are one of, I call her, evangelizers there right now today in American politics and culture. We need more of that. And I think it's actually been helping a ton. And just always enjoy reading what you got. So, I'm glad we can have this conversation today. We're just going to shoot it out and back and forth about different things. Feel free to punch back or challenge me on my belief system.
Yeah. I just want to say real quick, though, I love what you're doing over at Catholic for Catholics. It's been great. You guys burst on the scene just out of nowhere. It seemed like, at least to me, all of a sudden you're like organizing like tens of thousands of people in front of Dodger Stadium, whatever, and doing all this stuff. And it's been great. I really do appreciate the stuff you guys are doing.
First event we did was the People's Convention in Detroit. You remember that? We came and spoke there at our breakout session. That seems like an eternity ago. That was, of course, the 2024 election in Detroit. There were 15,000 kids there. And you were there, part of a breakout, and we had the traditional Latin Mass that we did there.
And that was pre-assassination attempt because Trump was there as well. And it was crazy. And that was, of course, the Charlie Kirk, tied in with the Charlie Kirk event. So, I mean, good Lord, how much has changed since then? I mean, that was just a year and a half ago. And Charlie Kirk's there, and now he's been brutally murdered. Trump was there, and he was shot like weeks later. I mean, it's crazy how. And that was just June of 2024. And that was, it seems like a whole different world even back then.
Times change fast. I remember literally I texted Charlie because we know obviously he was very close to Catholicism, right? Especially towards the end. He told Bishop Brennan, of course, a week before he died, that I am this close to becoming Catholic. But we sent him photos of that Mass there in the People's Convention. And I remember his reaction was just like, because it never been done before. It wasn't like a turning point thing, right? They wouldn't have Catholic stuff, or let alone traditional Latin Mass, right? So, I know he was very happy with that, to see that, and it was the largest breakout session. So, anyway, we go way back, don't we? A year, Eric. But so talk to me about, because this is up in the air, about the rise of Catholicism in the U.S. Like, what's the future right now? We're 250 years in for this experiment, right? As the founding fathers called it. And you see different stats out there. I know you have a really good analysis of this. Are we really growing as a Catholic faith in this country? Yes or no?
Both. And that's what's that's what's crazy about it. I've been studying this for a long time. I mean, I was a director of evangelization for a diocese for 5 years. This is about 15 years ago. And I've been studying the stats, looking at the data, looking at surveys. I mean, I do this all the time. Every year, new ones come out, Pew Study, Cara, all these other ones.
Yeah.
Like, what is the state of Catholicism in America? And really, it's a funny thing because something's changed in the past year or so. Because from about 2000, when I started looking, it was around 2010, like looking at really in depth. Until about a couple years ago, the narrative was just the same, which is the sky is falling. And it was legitimately true that people were flocking away from the Catholic Church in just record numbers. Our conversions were not very strong. Like I converted in the 1990s, and we were having 150, 180,000 people a year coming into the church in America at that time. It had gotten down maybe 5-10 years ago. It was down in maybe 30, 40,000. People get excited. 30,000 people came to church. I'm like, guys, that's awful if you consider the size of our country, size of our church, and if you compare it to the number of people leaving. And so that was just the only narrative. And I hated to be the Debbie Downer, but that was just the reality. And then in the past year, maybe two or 3 years, something has changed. Now, the bad news is the number of people leaving is still the same. It's still just millions of people leaving. But the difference is we're seeing a significant increase in conversions, people coming into the church. And the way I look at it is I feel like what's happening is a lot of people who grow up Catholic, their experience of Catholicism is their local parish, which, if we are just being completely blunt, is usually awful. It's very, toned down. It's very much just be nice. It's terrible music. It's like, felt band, all the stereotypes. It's true at a lot of Catholic parishes. It's so watered down that a young person's like, what's the point of this? What's the point of making any sacrifices for this religion? It just is a bunch of, older people talking about we need to be nice. I can do that without having to go to mass each Sunday. So those people are leaving, so many of them. But yet what we're seeing is people who didn't grow up Catholic. And honestly, I think they're primarily experiencing Catholicism online. And so what they're seeing is this group of young people. They're seeing Catholicism online, which is a very different beast than Catholicism at your local parish. I mean, they really are very different. And so, but a lot of them are being attracted to it because what they're seeing online is people like a Taylor Marshall, for example, who is just unapologetic about the faith. They see this on X. They see this on, the podcast channels. They see Peter Kwasniewski, people like that who are very much just like, this is the faith that's been handed on to us. This is what we need to recover. And they're attracted to that. They're like, hey, this is something attractive. Now, the challenge, I think, is where are those people going when they convert? If they're going to a good, solid, traditional, or really conservative sort of parish, they're probably going to be fine. I mean, I got a friend. I shouldn't say a friend. He is my friend, but he's my son-in-law. He is actually the director of religious out ministries. I can't remember, faith formation at a solid Novus Ordo parish. And he said that, oh my goodness, it's ridiculous how many people they have in their, what do they call it now? OCIA program. I mean, they got so many people coming in.
Where was that at?
This is in Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay. Cause no joke. I had dinner with a priest 2 days ago, and they were at a Presbyterial meeting, and they compared numbers here in Phoenix. Same thing. Their OCI numbers are, off the charts.
Right.
So
and he said that, like, in talking to these, and it's a lot of young men, and they all listen like to the people that we're talking about online. And so their parish is a very good, strong conservative parish. Those kids are going to be, I call them kids. I shouldn't call them kids, but in their 20s, those guys, those converts, they're in good hands. And if they go like a TLMO parish, they're in good hands. If they go to a typical, just the parish down the street, that's what I worry about, because their experience of Catholicism at the local parish might be very different than from what they're hearing online. And because the reality is that's what happened in the 90s. When I said 150, 180,000 people came into the church each year, it also was pretty clear that a lot of them left later. They stayed in for a very short period of time. They got all excited by JP2 and this robust, unapologetic Catholicism out there. And then they went to their local parish, and the experience, I mean, that's what happened to me. I didn't leave the church, but like I did experience parish life was very different. And it was a struggle for me for the first few years as a Catholic of being like, okay, how do I reconcile this? What I have learned the Catholic Church to be, the true church, the Church of Jesus Christ, the one true faith that everybody should belong to, the sacraments are the life-giving, the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ and Eucharist, all this stuff I'm like super excited about. And then I go to the local parish. It's like, okay, let's sing, Be Not Afraid and On Eagle's Wings and leave. And so it is a challenge. And that's what I hope, though, is that these converts are finding good, solid parishes. I, of course, really hope that every parish would be a good, solid parish, right. But let's acknowledge the reality on the ground. So,
but what about the stats? I think you said, or somebody said that it's like for every one Catholic that comes in is 8 leave, correct?
Yes, something that's right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I in an article I wrote, I said like 840 for every 100 Catholics who come into church, 840 leave. So clearly, the converts is rising is good, but it's nowhere near making up for the number of people who are leaving. That's still far worse than the number of people leaving. And so there's no real end in sight until parishes, they really get it together and they start improving things. And I do think there's some good news on that front as well. I do think they're getting more and more like that, but it's still true. If you go travel around the country, you go and you just walk into the parish that you drive by, chances are better than not that it's going to be a very kind of lame parish life there. And it's not going to be one that really fosters a real devotion to the faith. So we still have a lot of work to do on that level. I feel like, though, I mean, the thing I noticed is like for years, there's been criticism of like toxic Catholicism online. And literally the people I mentioned are the people who are in the crosshairs the most. And it's like, yet they're the ones who are being mentioned at OCIA classes of like, hey, what do you think of this guy? Listen to this guy and stuff like that. So, I mean, one man's toxic is another man's unapologetic. So is the way I look at it.
That's really true. What would be interesting, though, is like the exit polls. We need exit polls about the 8 people who are leaving. Why are they leaving? Like, how do we know they're leaving? Like, do they actually like say, yeah, I'm no longer Catholic or whatever? And why do they leave? So one argument that could be made, though, is like, obviously, like, were they ever really in love with their Catholic faith? You know what I mean? So it's like, so in some ways you can almost discount that they were even Catholic. So in that sense, Catholicism is on the rise in a weird way, right? Because
I mean, I think it's, some of this is kind of like a little bit, you have to just be very blunt. You're not saying you like it or don't like it, but I do think what's happening is Catholicism on the rise in the sense that the Catholic Church is getting better. I'm not saying it's getting bigger. I'm saying it's getting better. And because the converts coming in, they're on fire, they're unapologetic, they're great in so many ways. And the people who are leaving, like you said, did they ever really practice the faith that much? And a lot of through no fault of their own, in the sense that they were raised by their parents very, not very well in the Catholicism, and by their parish not very well. So they never really, embraced that. And you bring up the exit polls. That is the biggest challenge because people don't give the real reasons often of why they left. Because what they will do is they will be asking when they're like 35 and they left, let's say when they're 20, why did you leave the Catholic Church? And at that point, they'll have some reason because they've become like maybe some liberal, like, oh yeah, I could never be in a church that didn't allow gay marriage or that was against women's rights and stuff like that. But if you look at the reality, when you look a little deeper, what it was they were in college, they got into the party scene, they'd feel like getting up on Sunday morning. And then they just kind of fell away because it wasn't that important to them to get up on Sunday morning. And that's really the reason they left. And then later they were like, I'm not going back because now they've been indoctrinated with like liberalism and stuff like that. And so they don't like the Catholic Church for other reasons, but often they slide away is really what it is. They're not like making some, here I stand out, Martin Luther type stand. It's just like, I got better things to do on Sunday morning, like sleep in than go to mass.
You know what we need? We need to get actually precise numbers. Maybe we should do what Germany does. I know you know this, but like I was with a American friend who has lived in Germany for like 5 years. And when he has to file his taxes, like they literally have to put down like what religion they are. And his CPA in Germany was like, dude, I don't care if you're Catholic, you're an idiot. Just say you're not Catholic, because as soon as you mark down you're Catholic, they skim off the top and they send those taxes right, directly to the church, right, which goes back to Otto von Bismarck, and then Hitler also re-emphasized that the church tax, right? So he was like, heck no, I'm gonna say I'm a Catholic, and then he just take whatever it is, like 20% off. So they have really precise numbers in Germany, right, and a lot of money for that reason too.
Yeah, it's a weird, like, moral question if you're in Germany and you're Catholic, because if you don't want your money necessarily going, like, I know a lot of Catholics in this country, they don't want their money going to their local diocese because their local diocese does some stupid stuff with it. So, like, if you're there, like, can you say you're not Catholic? Would that be like denying the faith, like kind of like the Romans, in the Roman Empire? I mean, it's a weird question. I mean, I would think I would always put down I'm Catholic and just have to pay it. But it's a weird thing. But it would be nice to have some more details. Some of these surveys are better than others, but often, like I said, people aren't completely honest. And sometimes it's like they're not even being dishonest. They're more they just have they've kind of changed. They've kind of made their slide away from the Catholic Church in their own minds be a little more noble than it really was. They just didn't want to get up in the morning. And the reason they didn't want to get up in the morning is because they stopped believing. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's like, there's a lot there, but it's not some huge, like, stand against the patriarchy or something like that.
You highlighted what I'm going to call like almost like a parallel church. Understand this correctly. You have what's going on at the Catholic parishes around the country, but then you have like this new parallel church online, right? The amount of evangelists and also just good priests too, bishops speaking up, right? That people can kind of like tune into Father Chris Allar, listen to his homily. What do you got to say about mediatrix or co-redemptrix, right? So there's like a parallel thing that exists, which has contributed, I totally agree with you, to the rise of Catholics coming in. And let me flip that around, because I think and this may be why in some ways you have that famous clip, which I want to show in a second, about you got the phenomenon of Father James Martin. We all know about it, right? He's saying this stuff. And I think what you sometimes will get when you interact with bishops and priests or whatever, they will try to pass this off and say, well, that's not really my problem. Father James Martin is speaking in New York, or he's doing that thing, so we're just going to focus on. But here's the point, like, people, there exists a parallel church out there. It's called the internet. So he, gone are the days where a priest needs to get permission to come into the local diocese to give a talk at a parish, because he just did it. It's called TikTok. It's called X, right? He just, circumvented that, right? So I know you probably agree with it. Let's just play that clip from Father James Martin, Bishop Strickland, and have Eric, you comment on that whole situation there at the Bishop's Conference.
I don't know how many of us have seen on the social media priests and others gathered celebrating the confirmation of a man, living with a man openly, and it just needs to be addressed. Father James Martin, once again involved, great pictures of all of them smiling. Here we are talking about doctrine. I just thought I need to raise that issue. I know it's not part of any agenda, but this body gathered, we need to address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you, Bishop Mosek. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
What do you have to say to that, Eric?
I mean, God bless Bishop Strickland, as always. I think the problem is that bishops really do live in a different land. They live in the past, and they don't understand things have changed. It's exactly what you said. So, for example, even let's pick a good bishop, somebody I admire, like Bishop Corleone. If I live in San Francisco, I want to know what Bishop Corleone thinks about a public act like that, like Father James Martin does. I mean, he doesn't have to comment on every single controversy in the church. That's not necessary. But I do want to know that he recognizes this is a huge scandal. And so, like, I live in Cincinnati. I would love for my own bishop, Bishop Robert Casey, I would love for him to say something like, yeah, this is not right. We don't accept this. This is contrary to what we believe. Like I say, it doesn't have to comment on every single act of every controversial act by a priest or whatever. But like, this one was like a big deal because it was a very public sacramental act in which a man was receiving confirmation while he's in a state of mortal sin. I say that just simply because of the fact that he's living in a quote unquote married relationship that he's not repented of. He's public about. He receives communion while he's there. And it's all just like Bishop Strickland said, they're all standing there smiling. And so this affects, somebody, in the old way, though, it's like, yeah, Father James Martin is a Jesuit, so he's under Jesuit superiors, and he's in New York, so he's under, I assume that was in Cardinal Dolan's jurisdiction. That's what I heard, but I have not confirmed that. I'm not 100% sure about that, but let's say it's Cardinal Dolan's. So yes, Cardinal Dolan should be the one who comes out and says, this is not acceptable, disciplines the priests involved, and makes it very clear what the church teaches. That is his duty if this is in his jurisdiction. Absolutely. He's required to do it. And the Jesuits, I know what we all think about the Jesuits, but they should say, okay, this can't be allowed. But even if they don't, or even if they do, I do think other bishops need to recognize that Catholics in their diocese see this, they're scandalized by it. They potentially start to fall away from the faith because of it. They start to have heretical views because of it. And that is your duty as a bishop, is your flock to make sure that you teach them, that you guard the faith. And so if a serpent like Father James Martin, his influence comes into your flock, which it can because of the internet, it wouldn't have, 100 years ago, we don't hear about this. It wouldn't have happened, but, we wouldn't hear. But this is a big enough deal that it's like when Arius, we're celebrating the 1700th anniversary of Council of Nicaea. Arius was just in Alexandria. He started to be a problem in Alexandria. The Bishop of Alexandria took care of it. Nobody else heard about it. But then all of a sudden it started to grow. It started to become more and more popular throughout the empire. Other bishops then said, we have to step in as well. That's what's happening here. Father James Martin doesn't have to leave the New York to Catholics in Cincinnati or in Phoenix or San Francisco, wherever. So the bishops need to say, listen, this is what we teach. This is not. They could even do it in a way. This isn't my way. If they want to not call out specifically Father James Martin, at least come out and say something of, in order to receive information, you need a state of grace. We should eat communion, and being in a married, quote unquote, married homosexual relationship is not, and something like that, where they don't even necessarily name names. That at least would be something that Catholics under them would say, okay, now I understand exactly what the faith is taught. But that's not what happens. They don't. Bishop Strickland's literally the only one who said anything, and he doesn't even have a diocese, and so it really is a scandal.
It is. And obviously, you can't forget, Father Martin's still on the Vatican Dicastery for Communications. So
which is one reason why they don't say anything.
Absolutely needs to be addressed. And so, it was kind of a gut punch, honestly, when he was met with just basically silence too from the panel there, and that kind of hurt. That kind of stung. I got to be honest. But, God bless Bishop. We need to pray for our bishops. And what's your take now on the whole immigration thing? Very complicated, but it's like, in some ways like, okay, everybody talks about this ad nauseum, but when you literally have the president of the United States speaking about it, you have the Holy Father who continues to address it, and then you have the bishops' conference whose main focus, they looked at it themselves as like their number one issue there is the immigration thing. We have to be talking about it, right? So thoughts on it, and then I'll give you my own.
I think that, honestly, my major thought when I see what the UCCB says about immigration, they say it's the heart of their message, the migration crisis, whatever.
They use that word, right? Specifically,
they said the heart. Yes, that the migrant situation, crisis, or whatever it was at the heart of the bishop's work. And to me, my first thought was, boy, they really like being fashionable. They really like being fashionable, because I know millions of babies are being killed every year from abortion. We just talked about this. Millions of souls are leaving the church. It seems like one of those two things, or both of them, should be really at the heart of the bishop's message. Yet they put immigration as forefront. Why? Because it's fashionable. They know when they go to their cocktail parties for their high-rolling donors, nobody's going to give them a hard time about that. They're going to pat them on the back and say, well done, because it's still true that a lot of the big donors are boomers who are center left. They're not even necessarily liberal. Some of them are, but more center left, stuff like that, who are going to be that message resonates with them about like, let's stand up to Trump again in the migration
You
crisis.
think so? Like, really? I mean, come on. Like,
Yeah.
when you look at the polls though for the election, I mean, Americans voted overwhelmingly. It's one of the three top reasons why Trump got to office was for mass deportations, which includes probably a lot of conservative wealthy donors. So you
I
think that
I think it's less the
Medicare
donor
or
class.
government grants?
Yeah, I think it's less the donor. I'm not big on the government grant story. I know everybody likes to say like, well, they're getting these hundreds of millions of dollars from the government for doing that. I
Okay.
honestly think that a bishop, the way, I mean, because I've worked directly for a bishop like that, and I know a number of other ones. They don't live like that. Money's not coming to them. They're not like getting anything. I think it affects them in the sense that they have employees that can only be hired, can only be, paid if they get the government grants, and they don't want to lose, they don't want to fire those employees. Okay, that is part of it. I'm not saying it's not.
Mhm.
I don't think though that's like the big thing is like the money. I really do think that like first, I think most of them do believe like in essentially like an open borders, or at least maybe not open borders, but a more liberal policy than a more Biden-esque, where it's like, okay, just don't ask, don't tell type of policy towards migration. And so then it's like they know they're just not going to get pushback from the fashionable people. I really do think that affects them a lot. And by that, I also mean like the media, like the local paper. Like I know for us, we're like, what? Who the heck cares about the local paper? I do think though that a typical bishop in a diocese, he cares what his local paper writes about him. And if he stands up against abortion, or if he stands up and he supports Trump's migration policies, for example, he's going to get hammered in the local paper. That's going to harm, his reputation. And I do think it's going to harm his reputation with the local donors, like your local donors, when all of a sudden the local paper, and this is obviously, we both know this, how stupid this is, because who cares about the local paper things? But I do think that is a major factor in all this, that they don't want to really address the major issues. They know they can look brave by standing up for Trump on the migration thing. They can look like they're speaking truth to power. They're prophetic. They even use the words like prophetic and stuff like that. When it's like under Biden, we had kids being killed. We had kids being transgendered. We had all this stuff. They weren't being very prophetic then.
It doesn't make sense though. Like, why wouldn't you think even some of these middle of the road donors would like that they would speak up on some of those issues too? Like,
yeah,
let's talk about the traffic kids, okay? And I'm going to show you just a clip here from Tom Homan. Play that clip when you have it, Charles. That issue, okay, ICE is doing their thing. They're taking people away. They're deporting. Okay, maybe there's some inhumane treatment somewhere. Yes, of course, they should have access to the sacraments. I don't care who you are, right? But not once have we talked about the kids that Tom Homan is rescued. Let's play that clip.
Lives. I wish the Catholic Church would understand that. We have the right to secure our borders like they have the right to secure their facility. ISIS sent a message to the whole world: don't give your life savings to come to the country, because you're not going to be released. You're not going to cross the border legally, you're going to be prosecuted. So the Catholic Church is wrong. I'm sorry, but I'm a lifelong Catholic. I'm saying it as not only a borders, I'll say it as a Catholic. I think they need to spend time fixing the Catholic Church, in my opinion.
I was with Tom Homan a couple days ago in Mar-a-Lago, and I was just reminded of how much good this man is doing to save trafficked children and those lost during the whole Biden invasion. As church leaders debate back and forth on this, what ICE is doing, I don't hear that enough. I don't hear us talking about those kids and saving those kids. That's what we need to be addressing. And ICE is doing the work, and we want to support them in doing that.
Fact of the day, I asked Bishop Strickland, who was there. I said, Bishop, in all the talk about immigration happening during the USCCB meetings, did it ever come up once, hey, what are we going to do as a bishop's body to go after 300,000 kids that have been lost? And did anyone say, like, congratulations to Tom for what he was doing for saving, I think it's like 40,000 kids they've actually found so far? I asked Bishop that. Answer, no, nothing. In fact, Bishop made an interesting point, Eric, when they were showing like their video to all the other bishops about what was going on in immigration, and the same video was actually shown to the Holy Father. And Bishop noted that there was a very one-sided video. It was just all about the plea of the migrant. It had nothing to do with the amount of citizens who've been killed by migrants or the kids or whatever. It was almost unfair to the Holy Father, misrepresenting what's actually going on here in the States. Thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I think here's the reality. migration enforcement is always going to be messy. What I mean by that is there are going to be
Yes.
problems. There's going to be, if you're too loose, you're going to have trafficked kids. If you're too strict, yes, you are going to have some situations where people are treated inhumanely, potentially. Let's just acknowledge that, because what happens is that, the media will take one inhumanely treated migrant, and all of a sudden you make it like the whole thing that needs to be completely changed. Well, then all of a sudden you're going to go to the problem of trafficked kids and stuff like that. So it's like, you have to, first of all, just be realistic that it's a messy, migration is always going to be messy. So the question is, as bishops, your job as bishops is to make sure you're proclaiming like the principles, the moral principles, like trafficking children is awful and we need to do everything we can to protect them. That should be, frankly, the beginning of the message. And then you can say, and when we do have to do deportations and stuff like that, I don't mind if they say, listen, we have to treat them humanely, because it's true, as Catholics, we should be doing that. Now, there can be some debate about what humanely means. I mean, if somebody is sent, if you send back a dad who's here illegally and has committed no crime since he entered illegally, and you separate him from his family, is that inhumane? It's like, well, I mean, he broke the law. I mean, we have a right to secure a border and to say, and have rules and regulations for when people can and cannot come in. And the Catechism says that very clearly. So even that gets a little bit messy. But what's not messy is a trafficked kid. And that's not messy at all. And like, it just really is unbelievable how tone deaf they are, because it's just like, I've said this numerous times. Their actions have made it clear they support open borders. They will say, oh no, we're not open borders. We're not saying that yet. In fact, that, the Holy Father himself said that, like, nobody says like open borders. And he's right. The problem is, in action, the bishops here have supported open borders. We know that because they said nothing against what Biden was doing, and Biden essentially had open borders for 4 years.
That's it. And that's so frustrating for me. Like, I knew this would be a mess. You knew this would be a mess. Everyone knew this would be a mess during the 4 years. It was a battle that was coming. And that's why we were like pulling our hair out figuratively, like, come on, help you, our bishops or whoever, faith leaders, speak up. This will be a disaster for the local communities. What is Trump supposed to do when he takes office? So that's what's kind of hard to buy.
30, 40, 50 million people into the country, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, then guess what? Trying to just say, okay, some of you guys need to go home. That's going to be a mess. And honestly, I actually don't think it's been that much of a mess. I think the Trump administration has done a very good job of minimizing, because trust me, if it was really bad, that would be everywhere. And it's actually, they'd be trumpeting all the mistakes all the time. I actually think they've done a pretty good job. In fact, I wish they'd be a little bit more strict, but I think they've actually done a pretty good job of being humane and of trying to do everything they can to make it a smooth process possible. I do think, I'm really big. Like, I was in charge of prison ministry when I was director of evangelization for diocese. And like, when I was doing that, we struggled often. This is in Florida. We struggled often to get the sacraments to the people in prison. And that was a big frustration. And I do think we should do everything we can. I don't care if the guy is a gang member who's, killed and raped a ton of people. I think we should try to get the sacraments to him, because obviously he's the one who needs it the most. I mean, my goodness, if he's willing to, say his confession, we need a priest there. And so I do think that's one. And it sounds like the Trump administration, like Bishop Barron's trying to work with them. So I think that's great. That's right. And I think that's all good. I would like to make sure that I heard some Catholics say, oh no, just they can get sacraments when they go back home. No, they need to, if we can give them the sacraments, we want them to, because we love it if they convert it. We still send them back. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we then keep them, but wouldn't it be better to send back a man who's converted to Christ than send back a guy who's still, deep in his sin? So, what a gift we give the country we're sending them back to.
Yeah. And I don't think, honestly, Tom Homan and the top leadership at ICE are really opposed to that. Of course they want people to talk. Come on. It's, by the way, this is in spite, they're doing a good job in spite of the opposition that they're getting. Imagine if you are an ICE officer in Chicago suburbs, Aurora, wherever that is, and your car's getting rammed, you have people showing up, you don't know if they've got a gun underneath. Like, they're holding together pretty darn well, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. I think, I know we're going to talk about Trump and MAGA a little bit, but I would say the thing I'm most pleased with the Trump presidency, this 2.0, is the immigration. He really has closed the border pretty significantly. And that's step one. There's no point even talking about this unless you close the border first. And he has done that. And they've done, I kind of wish they'd do more, but I mean, I understand the reality on the ground is difficult. So
they're also limited too by their funding, how much they can do.
Yeah.
So you went there. Let's go where they're right now. The future of MAGA. Like, what is going on? Is 1 year ago that we worked our tails off. A lot of us got on the ground, delivered Trump the Catholic vote, 65-50%, the greatest Catholic landslide in U.S. history. A year later, a lot of us are scratching our heads on a lot of different issues. So let's just, and by the way, at the end of this, we've been complaining about a lot of stuff, or complaining figures that we will pray for the bishops, we will pray for President Trump and all of our elected leaders. That's important. We got to do that. Absolutely. But give us the grade. What do you say so far about how President Trump has done? Keep in mind, it is not an easy job.
I think that like from January through about April, I give him like an A+. I mean, honestly, that was the great, and I'm older than you. I'm in my 50s, and that was the greatest period for a presidency in my lifetime. I mean, without question, what he was doing was just, I mean, first of all, the stuff we were talking about, ICE and all that stuff, Doge, actually addressing real government waste and corruption, things like that. Just everything he was doing was just on fire.
How about the beautiful executive order? I mean, thanks be to God. Yeah. If it wasn't for Trump's executive order, there may be like 10 genders, Eric.
Yeah.
I mean, so just like that.
Yeah. I mean, everything he was doing, I mean, he was firing on all cylinders, getting RFK, in there, all this stuff. I'm a Bitcoin guy. So all the stuff he was doing for Bitcoin. I mean, all this, I mean, I was just like, this is what I voted for. I mean, this is because I've told people this before, but in 2016, I did not vote for him. I voted third party. In 2020, I voted for him somewhat reluctantly. I was kind of like, well, I realized, okay, he wasn't that bad. First of all, it wasn't as bad as I thought he was going to be. So that's good. 2024, I voted for him enthusiastically. I had my MAGA hat, everything. And I will say though, I'm convinced something changed. I have been very disappointed in him. I'm not saying, like I already said, he's doing good on immigration. I'm not saying he's all bad. I am saying though, I think there's been a massive change for the worse in Trump and how he's done things since around April, May, I don't have a specific date. I'm just saying though, it seems to me just crazy, the stuff he's doing, like how he's decided to, like the people he attacks the most are people who should be his closest allies, Rand Paul, Thomas Massie, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, he just goes all out against them and how awful they are supposedly. And yet he cozies up to Lindsey Graham, who, frankly is one of the worst senators on, in the Senate. And he, or against even Biden, Obama, he wasn't as hard on them as he is on these guys. So that is just been very disappointing. His, the bombing of Iran, I thought was, I'm not, people are like, well, look, it worked out. There's long-term consequences, all this stuff. It's like, we had Bush saying mission accomplished and it ended up being a disaster, what actually happened over the time. So the blind support of Israel and what it's doing in Gaza, I think has been awful. Like I said, the basically, I know Doge isn't gone, but like, all that stuff was pushed to the side. Right. All the stuff, I mean, like trying to really shut down these government agencies and defund them, Elon's, the falling out with Elon, and I'm not, Elon's great and he's also awful. I mean, he's both at the same time, but like the great stuff he was doing for Trump and he got kicked out basically. So I don't know what's going on. I mean, there's rumors now that he's thinking about getting rid of Susan Wiles, right?
Wiles, yep.
Yeah, the chief of staff, and that she might be the problem, that she's basically kind of directing him towards this. I mean, what he's been doing is, I feel like Trump's first administration, the Trump 1.0, 16 to 20, I felt like it was basically a generic Republican administration plus with some a little bit better than that, not way better than that, but a little bit better, but kind of like, because all the people he picked were like just standard Republicans for all the different advisors, stuff like that. His Supreme Court picks were better than like a Bush or anybody like that, but it wasn't that great. It was like, it was like, okay, well, I feel like that's what we're going back to. Like after the first few months of like Trump 2.0 really is different. It really is a difference. Like even little stuff like how he only talks to like Fox News and like he talks to the mainstream media, and he stopped going on the podcast.
That's
I mean,
right.
that was so great when he
What
went on
won
the
him the election.
Yeah, and that's what
And
exactly.
Barron, Trump getting those podcasters together, getting Gen Z men, young men, hyped for Trump for his dad, right?
Yeah.
And it was effective.
Yeah, and he, I mean, because Rogan is not really big on Trump anymore. Theo Vaughn's not really big on Trump anymore, and he got them completely behind him. And I really feel like it's an own goal. Like I don't think it's like they've left him because Trump did what he's going to say. It's because he's going against what he said he was going to do. I think, and then of course the Epstein files. That was like the one that really kind of broke me in the sense of like, I'm sorry, but you're just gaslighting President Trump when you say it's a Democrat hoax. We all know it wasn't a Democrat hoax. We all know it was the Republicans who were really pushing for this. And then he really tried to kind of warp reality, which he does sometimes, and sometimes for good, sometimes for bad. But he really tried to warp reality. And it's like, I was never even I didn't vote for Trump because of the Epstein stuff. I like the Epstein stuff isn't real high on my list of most important political topics, but it is something I'm like, okay, we do need to, it's part of the drain the swamp thing, which is important to me. And yet
it's significant like in its own way, because it's like it's a moral benchmark to show what you're willing to do. Like, because there's at the heart of this, there's a two-tiered system of justice, and Trump himself experienced this.
Yeah.
I mean, the hours he sat in that courtroom in New York, you'd think, right? The J6ers, the pro-lifers, you name it, right?
Right.
And so the Epstein file kind of like symbolized, I think, the breaking of that two-tiered system of justice.
Yeah.
And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it really was weird because he just, honestly, I feel like he handled it so poorly, because in the end he kind of lost because, the Congress ended up forcing him to sign it and everything. He had to kind of pivot and everything. And he did in his Trumpian way, but he ended up, that's a political battle he spent tons of political capital on, and he lost. And for what? Like, I don't actually think he did anything really horrific when it comes to Epstein.
No one
I actually
really
don't
does.
think that.
Right.
I think that would have come out long ago. And it doesn't seem like that's the type of, I mean, the guy's done some immoral stuff. I mean, let's not act like he's a saint, but at the same time, he has certain things areas that he not so great, and others that I don't see that happening. So anyway, the point though is like, you just wonder, did he have friends who will be implicated? And he did it like sense of loyalty to try to protect them. Did he think, I think this is like one of the things I think is possible is Trump's obviously going to be named a lot in the Epstein files because they had a relationship. And he might have just thought that most people aren't going to be nuanced enough to distinguish that, yeah, he was in the same circles, but he actually did nothing really wrong. It's just more like Trump's in the Epstein files, and that would be enough to harm him. Maybe he thought that. Like, maybe he just thought,
I'm thinking it's donors. I'm thinking it's big donors close to him.
You think so? That they would be implicated, or people they support would be. Yeah, I think that's very plausible that's the case, because, I mean, there's also the whole thing about like what's the connection to Israel and, and the Zionist cause and things like that, because Epstein obviously had connections to Israel. I don't think it was as clear cut as like he was an Israeli agent. I do think though he was used by Israeli secret services and American, so I think there's that whole thing's kind of an unknown mess, but. So to me, it was a head scratcher, because the one thing Trump is he's a winner. He knows how to play his own game, which is not the normal game. And I felt like this was such a fumble, and he ended up losing a lot of his enthusiasm of his supporters. He ended up losing the actual battle in the end. And it made no sense to me. And it is still like there is the donor class versus the voter class, and honestly, I've gotten a little bit black-pilled about Trump because of the fact, like, if he can't stand up to the donor class, the deep state, I don't know who can, because
I don't know who can. It's almost like you're right. The reality of like the American presidency today in 2025, or even your standard U.S. Congress person, right? It's like, to get where they need to get to, they have to like compromise. Right?
Yeah, it's like, I like J.D. Vance better than I like Trump. And I'm a big J.D. Vance fan. But the truth is, I trust Trump more to stand up to entrenched interests and lobbyists and donors, stuff like that, than I do Vance. And that's not an attack on Vance as much as just saying Trump, he plays by his own, to be his own drummer. But if he can't stand up to it, I don't have a lot of hope that Vance could. And like I said, I think Vance would be a better president in a lot of ways. But yet it just has made me very much just kind of a little bit black pilled on the whole thing, because it's like, because Trump was doing it for a couple months and all of a sudden he stopped doing it. Why? And we don't know why.
So let's talk about Zionism and what's going on there. I mean, you just had the I think Americans are waking up a lot of ways, and that's a silver lining to it, I think, is that there's this abnormal stranglehold on the American psyche, American politicians, right? For this MAGA maker, and we just saw it again right in our faces 2 days ago when our ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, I mean, yes, it's prefaced or it's buttered over with a theological error that we have a biblical mandate to support the 1948 state of Israel. I get it, which is like complete nonsense. But then when you're actually meeting with the former Israeli or spy, Jonathan Pollard, right? Let's play the clip from Mike Huckabee and have Eric comment on it.
Ask all the time, because I'm a Christian, and they say, well, why are you so supportive of the Jewish people? I said, you can be Jewish, you don't have to have anything to do with Christians, but you can't be a Christian and not understand that your entire faith is built on the foundation of Judaism. So for Christians, we look at this as an obligation, a moral debt that we must repay. And therefore, I don't understand anyone who says, I'm a Christian, but I don't really want to support the Jews. Well, how can you do that? But it is not the view of those of us who are what I would call biblical believers that accept that what the scripture says about the Jewish people. In Genesis 12, those who bless Israel will be blessed. Those who curse Israel will be cursed. It gets pretty simple. I say there's a miracle every day in this country.
Well,
I think what I should have done, I should name my kids Israel. That way nobody could ever go against them, because the Bible says those who bless Israel will be blessed. Those who curse them. I mean, it's such a, it's theologically a joke. And honestly, as a Catholic, I understand when Protestants might go there, because frankly, they're often, and there's some good holy Protestants, stuff like that. I'm not saying there aren't. But a lot of their theology is like paint by numbers theology, where they're just picking things from the Bible and they just to support whatever they already think. And it's when Catholics go down that path that I'm just like, come on, guys. I mean, let's not do that. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, there's so many things.
Do you see a lot of, Catholics go in that direction?
I do, and that's what's sad.
Really?
I get it, because I get pushed back a lot, because I'm pretty vocal in my opposition to what Israel is doing in Gaza, against America's blind support,
as was the Holy Father. Israel. Credit to him, and also
that's the thing is, I was right there with Pope Francis on this, and Pope Leo, I think is there too. But and so I got a lot of pushback from Catholics, who were I was called bitterly anti-Semitic. I've been called all these things, awful things, and they're like, you basically aren't a good Catholic because you don't support Israel. I'm like, guys, you're basically taking bad theology from the Protestants and kind of grafting it on to Catholicism somehow, and it just doesn't fit. It doesn't work, and it really is sad. But it does show how important theology is, because the fact is, the reason America supports Israel so blindly right now is because of bad theology. I mean, you heard Ted Cruz talk about it, very awfully, very kind of bumbling through it on Tucker show. You hear Mike Huckabee talk about it. You hear a lot of these, evangelical, it is mostly evangelical Protestants, but that's why I say Catholics shouldn't join in on that. But it all because of bad theology. You really think, Mike Huckabee truly believes, I think, that, what God talking to Abraham in Genesis 12, making his promise, that somehow that requires that we support a nation that was created in 1948 called Israel. And that's the same thing. I'm not saying there's zero connection. I do think some Catholics go a little too far in saying modern Judaism is completely different, a different religion than ancient Judaism. It's clearly the direct connection between them is there. It has changed in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it's we got to recognize Israel is just another nation. It really is, but yet it's never treated like that. Like if you oppose like what we're doing in Nigeria or Ukraine or Japan or China or whatever like
Right.
that, it's like you have a political debate about it. But boy, if you say, I don't think we should be supporting what the Israeli army is doing in Gaza, it's like you're bitterly anti-Semitic. It's like, okay, you don't have an argument. You get people like Mark Levin, who's just like, I mean, he literally sounds insane these days. I mean, the way he just screams about anybody who dares to say, and honestly, this really does give rise, in my opinion, I really do think this gives rise to actual anti-Semitism. I'm not one of these people who says like there's no anti-Semitism. There is real anti-Semitism out there. I don't think it's like we have Nazis roaming the streets or something like that. I think it's been inflated how big it is. But I do think it's growing. Actual anti-Semitism, I do think is growing, including among young Catholics. And I think that's
Because of Zionism.
Yes, exactly. Because of the Zionism and because of the fact that any criticism of a Jewish person, a Jewish state, whatever, is immediately met with you're anti-Semitic, you're awful, and like we're not allowed to even talk about it. And so a young person's like, well, it's kind of like some of it's psychology. It's like, well, if I'm going to be called anti-Semitic either way, well, then I can just say these things online, and I don't care, like actual anti-Semitic things because I'll be called anti-Semitic. If Eric Sammons gets called anti-Semitic and he never says these type of things, then who cares if I say them and called anti-Semitic? It's no different because I'm going to be called that either way. And I think sometimes they start to buy into some of this stuff. They buy into some conspiracy theories. I mean, just that you could explain very easily, like the power, the power of Jews in society is clearly not proportionate to their size. But like this is easily explained by sociology about like their history, the things they focus on, teaching their young people about like learning and education and striving for success and things and it is also partly because their moral system is a bit different. So they are going to sometimes, and a lot of these are atheist Jews, they don't actually believe in God, but they're still Jews. So they get involved. Yes, they get involved in the foundation of Hollywood, pornography, things like that. But a lot of times that's just so overblown. Like everybody loves to say, oh, the guy who runs Pornhub, he's a rabbi, and like proof that Jews are everywhere. Did you know one of the other guys who runs it is Catholic? Are we going to say like the Vatican's behind porn?
Right.
So I do think there gets to be some real like sloppy thinking that, and
it is sloppy. It's not even, it's almost unfair to call them Jews. Like, Larry Ellison, I want to say, the one who just bought TikTok.
Oracle guy. Yeah.
Billionaires. I mean, he calls himself a Jew, but he also is the first one to say, I'm actually an atheist.
Right.
He doesn't believe in God. Like, what does it actually mean? So I didn't even see it as a battle between Jew and Catholic. It's almost like, do you believe in God or do it's so.
Yeah. And so it does become like it really is a mess. And it's like, but honestly, I do think it starts with Zionism. I do think that's the error that starts with that has led to this, everything else. And the shouting down, finally people got tired of it because in my lifetime, I've seen it. Like I was trained, okay, you have to, I literally remember reading the article in Newsweek back, I can't remember when it was, probably in the late 80s, something like that, when Jesse Jackson said, okay, you can't call black people black anymore, you have to call them African-American. And it's racist to call them black. And so I was trained on that. And so I literally, in my mind, I still cringe a little bit when a white person calls a black person black, because I'm like, no, you're supposed to say African-American. It's like, it was just in my training to do that. In fact, I was with a friend the other day and I said something about African American. He's like, dude, they say we have to say black now, right? I'm like, oh yeah, right. And it's like, but like that type of nonsense of like, okay, you're a racist if you don't use this.
You're probably the kind of person too that stopped using the word gay as soon as it started to get
I mean, that's the thing is the funny thing is, of course, when I was in junior high and high school, we called everybody gay. I mean, it was the 80s. I mean,
look
everybody.
How fast that term changed, man. Like that was like.
We use the F word, which I won't use here, but we called each other that all the time. It's just like, guys, we were hanging out. You do something fun and you call somebody that. And that just, but then we were
trained. Gay's making a comeback. That word is making a comeback. Like you got to say, like, I mean, Candace Owens actually led the charge that, like, just kind of reclaim that word, kind of like we've reclaimed the rainbow. So
yeah, it is kind of, but the whole point is like young people realize that. And it went so crazy. It just kept on growing and growing. The feminist movement, and then you have like the trans and everything, where it's like they finally were like, the dam broke. It's like you're not letting us. We can't even have conversations because you're just going to shout me down as a racist, a misogynist, a homophobe, whatever. this an anti-Semite the second I even say the slightest thing that might challenge your narrative. And so then they're just like, once the floodgates are open, you get them, then they're, and I do know that some of the young people saying these things are more just for the reaction. They're not actual anti-Semites or
Mhm.
They don't hate gay people type of thing. They're just more like, they just want to get the reaction. I get that. But I do think there's actual anti-Semites out there. And I don't think it's like the big thing that we have to worry about, but I do think it's growing because of the Zionists. And so I think that's the real thing. That's where the focus should be of like combating Zionism. Once we do that, honestly, I think like the anti-Semitism kind of would fall by the wayside. If we were able to have a true debate where we talk about what the nation of Israel is doing, should we support it wholeheartedly? And I'm not even, and like, I think there's arguments to be made for America supporting Israel in the Middle East. I don't agree with them, but I think there's like good faith arguments is what I should say. Like, okay, we want to, the problem of radical
Protect the
Islam.
holy sites. Right.
Yeah, we want to protect the whole. All that. Like, I think that's a conversation that is a good one. You can have in good faith. It's just the second you say, well, I don't think they should be completely destroying Gaza. It's like, oh, you're an anti-Semite. It's like, okay, well, let's stop the conversation.
In a weird way, like what I see the most important thing to worry about right now is what religion are you? I know there's only one religion, but like lowercase r, right?
Right.
It's what faith are you? Because this goes to the heart of really what Catholic for Catholics is all about. Like, we want to make a case to American population, whatever, that it is Roman Catholicism, our Catholic faith, which is best suited, or only suited, you could say in some ways, to help America. It's Jesus Christ and the fullness of the sacraments, because it has geopolitical consequences. And the silver lining with this whole thing about Zionism and blah, 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 dispensationalism, is it kind of unmasked in a big way the ineptitude or the shallowness of Protestantism to really affront this geopolitical threat to America. And Catholicism is placed theologically better than anybody else to say, no, the new Israel is the Catholic Church, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to make this case. We're just taking advantage of some geopolitical stuff to kind of get in the back door and say, guys, it's the fullness of our faith, right? That's going to really bring people to ultimate, happiness in this life. Not that America is the be all end all. It's just it's a stepping stone to heaven, right? But
and I think somebody like Charlie Kirk was a good example of that. Like,
yes,
the work he did with him. Like, I really think we don't know how everybody influenced him, but I'm sure that like you guys coming in and partnering with, Turning Point with Charlie Kirk, and they say, okay, here people, we're on the same side. We have the same basic view for what we want for America, but we're Catholic, and here's how we see it from a Catholic perspective. And then people like Charlie Kirk are like, oh, okay, now maybe I will listen to these guys, and when it's a contrast somebody like you with somebody like, Mark Levin or somebody like that, who's just like shouting and screaming at them if they even, have Dave Smith even show up at a debate. And it's like, I think that is how it's perfect evangelization, because it really does, you kind of enter in with them for a common goal. And then it's actual real ecumenism is what I'd call it. Because like ecumenism, as it's done by most, leaders, is awful, because it's just like, let's talk about how great the other one is and stuff like that. This is like, no, we have a common goal. We both want this for our country. We will work with you, even though we're not the same religion, and we will work with you. And then we'll like kind of see that. I became Catholic through the pro-life movement. It was being around a bunch of Catholics in pro-life movement where we'd have good arguments on the streets while we're sitting in front of abortion clinics blocking them. Then we'd talk about like our theological differences. That's real ecumenism. That's real evangelization. And I think that's kind of what you're doing here is, when you partner with people like Charlie Kirk, who aren't Catholic, but it really did lead him towards at least appreciating Catholicism, which is the first step. And eventually, we don't know what would happen if he hadn't been brutally killed. But, I think a lot of other people, though, have been influenced by that. And I think that's the reason we're seeing a rise in conversions.
Absolutely. I really believe this from personal interaction with Charlie. And then I've said it before, but Charlie, as he was moving closer to Catholicism, which he definitely was, the closer he got to, he also understood that coincided with his geopolitical shifting away from a blind support of the 1948 state of Israel. He understood the geopolitical consequences of his conversion. I believe that. And here's the thing, this is kind of go down a rabbit hole about who killed Charlie Kirk, but he's not the only one who understood that. People around him saw that and knew that the closer he got to the Catholic faith, the farther he got away from a blind dispensationalist, right? And
Right.
he objectively was getting closer to the faith, right? He was not converted. No, he did not have his marriage validated in the church before, but he did have a Catholic funeral. He's buried at a Catholic cemetery. He was praying the rosary. Okay. That being said, well, I mean, do you agree with that? Is that too far-fetched to say that, all that?
No, I think that's very true. And I think that a lot of Catholics, a lot of people are becoming Catholic or at least being open to Catholicism. And there are very powerful forces, though, that are working against, like Charlie Kirk moving that direction. I think there's no, I haven't gone down the rabbit hole either of like, was the guy working alone? Was he actually the killer? All that stuff. But I do know that there were clearly powerful forces that were pressuring Charlie to not abandon a full Zionist cause. Because I know, as I understand it, at one point Charlie was like 100% a Zionist.
Absolutely was.
And then he clearly, I mean, the thing I know that caused a lot of the problem was when he let Dave Smith debate that, I think it was Josh Hammer. I can't remember.
Hammer.
Yeah, at a turning point. And then he had also Tucker, and he had Megyn Kelly, who was kind of going that direction as well.
He told Tucker Carlson right before that, and they showed the audio of that. He told Tucker right before he went on stage, go Max, go full out on Epstein Israel. That's what Charlie said. Exactly.
And I think, and I didn't know Charlie at all, so I can't speak for him, but I feel like though that was just his personality was he wanted to get all the ideas out there. And that's literally what his whole, like when you go to these campuses, he wanted the people who disagree with him to speak up. So, but like, I think what happened is he did go a step too far for certain powerful people, powerful donors, because I think his attitude probably was like, I might still be a Zionist, but like my whole shtick is letting people debate these things and giving people an opportunity to challenge different views, stuff like that. So I'll go ahead and do that with the Israel thing too. I feel like that probably is what led him down that. And then all of a sudden people are like, okay, you can't do this. This is where we're not allowed. You're not, I mean, the Ben Shapiro's of the world, like, no, you can't actually have this debate. And I think when that happens to most people, that's when they start to get a little bit like, okay, I need to look into this some more. I know, I mean, that's what happened to me. I didn't really think about the whole Israel thing for a long time. And I was like, just generally conservative. Okay, I guess I'm for, supporting and stuff like that. But then like when I started to see just the slightest pushback get met with like screams and denunciations and everything, I'm like, okay, and I think young people, that's exactly what they're doing too. And so, yeah, I think that's why we as Catholics need to be there with, first of all, the basic thing is the strong theology. Like, why is it that that's why I like talking about the most. So it's like when I have guests about this, I just had a guy on Gideon Laser last week who grew up as Jewish and he's now Catholic, and he's got a very good view about this. He's very reasonable. He looks at the church fathers. He looks at like, St. Thomas Aquinas, all this stuff about it. He doesn't go off on some weird, thing about it. He's just like, okay, let's stick to the theological facts. And I think that then gives people who are looking like they see dispensationalism, they see the Zionism and Protestantism as like a failed project. They're like, that does not make sense. When we say, okay, well, actually, the Catholic Church has been thinking about this for a long time. we got a lot of theology for what, because the truth is, if you look at the history of Catholicism, we have always seen a role for the Jewish nation. When I say nation, I don't mean like a political nation necessarily, but the Jewish people existing until the end of time. Like Thomas Aquinas talks about this, St. Augustine talks about this, others talk about this, that there is a role somehow in the mysterious ways of God for the Jewish people to always exist. That doesn't mean we don't try to convert them. I mean, Augustine and Aquinas would say we try to convert them, but there is some role. So we don't have this kind of weird, like, like an anti-Semitic Nazi type of attitude towards it. But at the same time, we also know that the Catholic Church, that is the new Israel. That is Jesus Christ, is the new Israel. That is the fullness of all the covenant promises in the Old Testament is, found in Jesus Christ, found in the Catholic Church. So I think when we offer that full, like, theology, then it bleeds over into politics, geopolitics, and all of that in a more healthy way.
Candace Owens, thoughts on her? She's the #1 podcaster in the world. She's talking a lot about Charlie these days.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. Candace Owens, okay, I'll lay my cards on the table. I've never been a fan of Candace Owens. And it's not because I think like, the people who hate her, I agree with them. I just have never really been in her style. Like, I don't care, honestly, if the president of France is wife is a dude. I mean, it would be it's kind of weird if it's true. But like, I'm not going to be one who's going to listen to a podcast where we explore all the reasons why, she's a he or whatever.
Mhm.
And I also know Candace says some things. I'm starting off with the negative. I will get positive. She says some things that are just, I know they're factually just not true. And she makes comments like, about the moon landing being faked. And and she says some things about Judaism that aren't really accurate. So I've just never, I think she's a little bit too loose with some of the, the facts she throws out there, some of the things. I think she also does things sometimes where she will say things about something where she'll insinuate something very clearly, but she won't state it. And then when you say she stated, she can reliably say, I didn't really say that, but she really is kind of directing people, pointing people towards something. All that being said, I still consider her one of us. I consider her doing good work and doing a lot of things that are good and standing up for things. And I think sometimes when she's like a dog on a bone on something, and that can be a good thing and a bad thing. It can be a bad thing when it goes off on some tangents that really aren't really helpful, but it's a very good thing when it goes on tangents that are very, very good. So glad she's Catholic. I'm happy about her, being Catholic and her husband as well and stuff like that. So they're just kind of some of it we have to realize. Here's the thing. I feel like when it comes to these influencers, these public personas, we're required to be either 100% for them, 100% against them. I just kind of think I don't really do that. Candace Owens, I consider one of us, but I'm not really that big a fan. That's okay. I don't have to be. Tucker Carlson. I think Tucker Carlson's great. I listen to his podcast somewhat regularly, but he's just crazy on certain things. I mean, he really he when he says we don't know how nuclear bomb was created, we absolutely know how a nuclear bomb was created. I mean, stuff like that. It's just but it's okay. I'm okay with that because generally he's doing good work. He's pointing people in the right direction. He's exposing things that need to be exposed. So we don't have to be 100% behind somebody to still be a fan of theirs.
I want to comment about what you said about Candace, but before I forget that.
Yeah, I want to hear what you think about her. You know probably more than I do.
You said something important though. We don't have to be 100% behind, for instance, Trump. And I think this is the thing that people misunderstood when you have there's the cult of MAGA. I think there's a way to challenge President Trump. And I think this was probably one of the reasons why his poll numbers have been going down is because he got into this bubble. He needs just as much as we need him to be with us. He needs to be with us. Think about the 2024 rallies as a lead up to the elections. Remember when he got booed? Everyone does. Why did he get booed? It was because of Operation Warp Speed. Operation Warp Speed is an amazing thing. And it's boos and MAGA rallies, unheard of, right? That had an effect. When Trump is in touch with his people, it's there's a difference. He needs that. He's missing that. And I do believe what you just said. I'm not the only one saying this. There's a close, tight circle around President Trump, which is stopping him from getting actually intelligence information. The time when he was asked, I think it was about the Russian strikes or the Ukrainian strikes on the Russian air bases. They asked him on the tarmac. It had happened 2 or 3 hours before. And Trump said, I didn't even know anything about that. What is that? That's the commander in chief. General Flynn made a point this is wrong. What's going on? So there's information that's kept from him. And I think that's hurting him in a long way. So I hope we can clear that up. Whether that's, I don't know, that means Susie Wild's going, I'm not really that in the know on that, but something's got to be done for that reason. So I just
want to say real quick that one thing we do know about Trump is Trump does change direction if he feels like he's going away from his people, his base, when he knows it. I mean, that's why criticizing him, booing when he talks about Warp Speed, he realizes, okay, certain things, and he will change direction. So, as much as people make him out to be this arrogant, no, he listens to his people and he will change direction if he feels like he's going against his base. I just don't think he knows he's going against his base right now.
Yep, and he needs it. And that's why those rallies were very important, I think. So maybe we can bring those back because, I'm worried about those midterms because people are pretty fed up. The whole MTG Marjorie Taylor Greene takedown was a gut check just to so many of us, So, but switching back to Candace, so none of us we can't canonize anybody. We're human beings after all. For crying out loud, we're human beings trying to do the work. They said the same thing about President Trump in 2016. Mean tweets. Don't like his style, but the guy bulldozed through 16 other candidates, right? And we can play armchair quarterback all we want about the president of the United States. Goodness gracious, that's the toughest role. It's insane. So Candace, I've grown to really appreciate and love who she is and what she's doing. You know, the Macron case, yeah, that's like kind of with you. Like, I understood why it was important, because if you have like with all this preying on children that we have today and this transgender stuff, that's a big story. If you were able to break that the president of France is actually you know, a man that was 40 years old when he married a 15-year-old, that's pretty big. I mean, that's
I do think the grooming part of that is super creepy and is
creepy,
like,
and then continue to hide that you're, you know, it's like, yeah, I mean, that's crazy. But what really maybe because the whole Charlie thing. Charlie was a friend. We lived a few blocks from each other. We went to church together. We're partners together. He's killed, and then so quickly, like, it's just automatically assumed that Tyler Robinson is the shooter, okay? Even with the crazy, stupid text messages, or that his dad brought him in, although he's never actually admitted that he did. And then the 30-06 bullet that apparently stopped in, you know, his neck. When you start to see all this different stuff and you see the timeline and things aren't adding up, and then out of nowhere, not really out of nowhere, right from the start get-go, you have Candace Owens start to speak up and challenge and push back and push back and push back. And then there are more people who start to follow her lead. And the same token, you have people that were close to Charlie not only not speak up about it, but are like, they shoot down the messenger for people who are asking questions. So I've gone to really appreciate, I mean, again, we could agree to disagree on all. So I know you don't really ultimately disagree with this, but like, I love what she's doing. I applaud her. I know, you know, that she's putting her and her husband, for that matter, they're putting their lives at risk for bringing to town what they've been. I think she's a model journalist in some ways. I mean, she might throw stuff here and there to see where it sticks, but she did discover the Egyptian plains. I mean, that's a big deal. Like, you have, for the last 2.5 years, you have like 67 times 2 different Egyptian planes, the same Egyptian planes, who have gone to every single one of Erica Kirk's events. I mean, that's crazy stuff. Like, what's going on there, right? Anyway. Just some thoughts.
I guess I'm just like, you know, I'm not naturally drawn to conspiracy theories. Like, after COVID and other things, I've kind of realized, oh crap, these are facts.
But you kind of, I mean, you sort of are, right? Because I mean, and I like that you say this too. I think you tweeted the other day on the 22nd of November. Does anyone still believe that the CIA didn't kill JFK? I mean, like, that's. I mean, that was like conspiracy 101 growing up in grade school, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I was taught it was a lone gunman, all that stuff. I mean, I'm not saying, what I'm saying though is I have a natural instinct to be to not embrace a conspiracy theory. I really need
healthy in a sense too, right? You know,
yeah,
it's good,
right. And that's how I was. You know, my parents were like that, my dad especially, and so I think that's good, because I do think some people. Like, I mean, I know people, friends with them even, they're good people, but like they follow every single conspiracy theory under the sun. And it's like, is that really healthy for the spiritual life to always be like, everything is not what you think? Because I do think what happens is you start to have almost a Gnostic view of the world, where you just look at like, I have inside knowledge and nobody else has. I'm part of this elite. And like, everything you see, everything is a lie. And it's like, and I honestly, I brought up the moon landing one, but there's a good example where there is overwhelming evidence. I've watched the videos, I've read the stuff about why it was faked. It's all nonsense. There's so much overwhelming evidence. It's ridiculous. This isn't a boomer thing. It just is like reality. And yet, once you start like embracing every conspiracy theory, it's very easy then to jump to the moon landing was faked and we don't know how nuclear bombs are created, stuff like that. And I do think there's some spiritual dangers in that. And so like with the Charlie Kirk thing, like I'm like right now I'm like, okay, if it was a dude who was like into transgender stuff and like, you know, liberalized by and radicalized in college who killed him, that story makes sense to me. I'm not saying it has to make sense always, but like that story is actually one that makes sense with the real problems in our country. I know like Jack Posobiec, he very much is still like, that's, you know, believe Tyler Robinson, that was it. So, I mean, there's good people of goodwill on both, you know, kind of who are like saying this too. And I'm just like, okay, so where are we going with this? If we think this isn't the case, I mean, some of it is like, you just want the truth. Okay, fine. I'm with you on that. But like, are we saying Israel did it? Are we saying like Miriam Adelson, you know, paid off a hitman or, you know, I mean, like, what is it? And what is it? Like, is it taking away from a real danger in our country, which is like these radicalized, violent transgender people that we've created? And so that's why I just get a little bit, and I will be the first to say I've not listened to all Candace's arguments for it. And so I'm not claiming like she's wrong. I'm just like, that's kind of been my attitude of like, listening to Candace Owens too much to me, it just like gets me distracted, in my opinion, from like, keeping things more focused. If something becomes overwhelming evidence, and maybe people like Candace Owens are the ones who make it overwhelming evidence, I get that. But like, yeah, so I it might be a personality thing. It might be because I'm a little bit older, and so I'm more apt to believe things I hear. I don't know, because obviously I reject the whole COVID stuff. I reject, I know JFK was killed by the CIA and that stuff. So it's I think the whole military industrial complex is
what are we
evil and all
supposed
that
to
stuff.
think?
So,
I mean, even or the most recent one, man, like Thomas Crookston. Who is that?
That
guy?
one, to me, that one
Yes.
seems much more obvious that there's something going on there. Like to me, when I
Yet
look
the FBI just declared last Friday night that he was a lone gunman. They officially, its case is closed. It's over. Right.
And that's the thing. So it's like, to me, like what I do is I look at the basic news story and I say, does it pass the smell test? To me, the assassination attempt on Trump did not pass it from day one. From the beginning, it did not pass it. Like the fact is, we have a guy running for president, Secret Service, all this protection, and yet this guy was able to do this. It made no sense to me. A lone trans affected crazy person could shoot Charlie Kirk, and that could have. So the basic story to me, I know there's some issues with the basic story, but I think every assassination you probably find the basic story has some issues. And so for me, I'm like, the basic story does pass the smell test. So for me, it's like, okay, I'm not going to delve into the possibility of conspiracies. And so that's the difference between the two for me, is like, I don't think Crooks passes the smell test. Obviously there had to have been some type of help or assistance or something, where I don't think that's necessarily true of the Kirk one. But, if all of a sudden, because of Candace's work, a bunch of stuff comes to light and it all comes out that, I'll be the first to say, okay, yeah, there was stuff there. I'm not going to like be like, oh no, it has to be Tyler Robinson, either. I just think that there's I'm not going to spend my time going down that rabbit hole.
Totally fair. And maybe we'll have a special episode, go through the facts of that case or not. But like, I mean, I get it. You haven't followed all the episodes. It's hard to. I do think there's this phenomenon too, where you have written words and then you have podcaster world. So you have not everyone, they don't connect always, right? Because not everyone has time to watch whatever, right? So you can kind of be on separate silos. From what I've seen, I mean, I believe she's right on it. I think she's close to uncovering something big, but who is behind it. Now, that being said, man, like, and this is probably a good way to kind of end this. Like, at the end of the day is why we have limited time on this earth. Like, your dad, I'm a dad, we're married. Like, how do we use our time? Like, and so if we choose to watch this podcast, like, how is it going to help me basically get to know Jesus Christ and save souls? Right. That's the end of the game. That's what it's about. So like my interest in this with Candace in some ways is like, if this shows a bigger thing that there's a forces within our country that we're not being honest about, whether it's Epstein, whether it's this, whether it's Mom Donnie taking over New York and they hate Christianity like no other, you got my attention, right? You know what I mean? So
also, to be fair, you were personal friends with Charlie Kirk. I wasn't. And so 100%. Like, if I was personal friends with Charlie Kirk, I could see myself being much more, my smell test might be a lot different.
More heightened. Yeah.
And so like, and Candace was too, of course. And so like, I get that. And I'm not like, and that's why ultimately, if it comes out, there's other stuff is true, I'll be like, okay, that's all true. But that's why I think it's the interest is like, I'm fine with the narrative that's being told. I'm like fine with like that. If that's true. Okay. Because we all would agree, and Candace would agree, you would agree that the transgender violence is a big problem. Even if this wasn't a case of it, it is an issue. It is something that happens. So yeah,
good stuff, man. Final thoughts here. What's the biggest threat that we need to be on the guard against in terms of Catholics here in the United States? What are we most going to be aware of?
I think it really is just a matter of the milquetoast kind of parish life. I know people we always want to talk about the Vatican. We want to talk about the USCCB, stuff like that. But souls are being lost at the parish level. That's where they're being lost. And because what's happening is people are, I mean, I just know a lot of Catholics, they just go to their local parish, they send their kids to the local school, maybe Catholic school, that maybe they don't make go to public schools, and they grow up in a parish and their kids all fall away. I mean, almost without exception. And I think that is the biggest threat, is like, if we don't restore a vibrant parish life, we're going to continue to see the numbers of 8 people leaving for every one coming in. So I'm very enthused that their parishes are getting better, but I really think that's where souls are won or lost, is at the parish.
Here's one action item for our audience you'd probably agree with regarding that, building up the parish life. I think we need to continue to pat on the back, okay, those priests out there who say they look at their parish schedule when they first get there and they realize that the confession is only available for 15 minutes on a Saturday or available by appointment. Like, who was the last person that just called up a parish priest and said, hey, can we meet for confession? I mean, I doubt that really happens, but you see it all the time on websites. So the parish priests and priests who make confession accessible, I mean, the ones that do it every day, I think that,
God bless them. They're the heroes.
Man. It's a game changer.
Yeah, it really is. I remember I actually was in a parish where we had confessions on Saturdays morning for 45 minutes, and that was all it was. We got a new priest in, and he literally, the first week he was there, he instituted daily confession, and he preached on confession his first 3 Sundays to make sure everybody knew this is what matters. And that parish was revitalized. It really, really helped it out, because all of a sudden it was daily confession. And it's funny because the first week or two, there was nobody in line, but he preached on confession, and, for 3 straight weeks, I think it was 3 straight weeks. And then, had confession every day, and the lines started getting longer and longer and longer. And even after he left, we got a new pastor. He kept the same confession schedule. The lines were still long. It really is amazing. And so God bless these priests. I mean, parish priest, oh my gosh, it's one of the, I'm not trying to be mean, but it's one of the worst jobs, in the sense of it's one of the most beautiful jobs too, of course. I'm sure a good parish priest will tell you that, but just as far as the difficulty in doing it, and the attacks and the spiritual attacks you get, the sociological attack, all that stuff. So yeah, I'm with you, commending all those priests who are putting their lives on the line every day for it.
Should we end with a prayer for our priest bishops, President Trump,
yes,
everybody,
and President and JD Vance, everybody,
yeah,
for
for all of us there, just trying to each one in their own element, with people that are it's good thing God's a judge, the ultimate judge of everyone's soul. He knows what's going on in everyone's world. Yeah. So we're just trying our best here. So let's just say an Ave Maria. Invite all the listeners to join us in this, praying for our leaders, because they have such a responsibility on their shoulders, especially the Holy Father. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. In nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. All right, Eric, thanks for joining us, man. You got plans for Thanksgiving?
Yeah, we always go to my sister-in-law's on Thanksgiving Day, and we go to my sister's the night before Thanksgiving. So it's always nice to spend time with family. So
Bears game, watching that Friday. I'm a big NFL fan. I know they've been pretty woke lately, but still a Chicago Bears fan. Gotta love them. And making homemade pumpkin pies, that's my thing, from scratch, the real deal. So
very good. Actually, on Thanksgiving morning every year for the past few years, I run a 5K. There's a huge 5K in our city. It's thousands of people. And I invite all my kids and my nephews and nieces. I actually have, I think 7 of my nephews and nieces are going to be running with me. We're calling it the Uncle Eric 5K. So I do that on Thanksgiving.
That's very MAGA of you, Eric. I'm impressed.
Yes, exactly. That's right. RFK would be proud of me.
RFK is going to be proud. When I was in Rome, the NAC seminary in North America, they would actually do that. They would run around the Vatican every Thanksgiving morning. So
yeah.
Good talking, man. Let's keep this up, and we'll be in touch. Thanks for joining us, everybody. This has been a special edition of Catholic Champion. God bless. Fight on.